Hello again. It's been a little while since I released a video. I have been recording bits and bobs to eventually throw together some massive compilation thing with time codes and all sorts of stuff, but I'm an absolute disaster of a person, so I will eventually get around to releasing something a bit more substantial. This is just a quick tips and tricks for getting rid of the dreaded neck seam, which is a big problem. Lots of people run into it. There's a few ways that you can kind of fix it. There's a few skin mods out there, which are, so in particular, Handmen's skin mod, which I'll cover briefly towards the end of this video. But the neck seam is just ugly looking, isn't it? It's horrible. You can make a decent looking character, and then you just got this ugly ass line. So if you're not sure how to get rid of it, I will teach you. I will show you the ways. Before we go on, just want to say thank you for the feedback and comments and stuff I've gotten from my previous video. Taken lots of stuff on board. It's very much appreciated. So let's get down to it. So first things first, like I said in my previous sort of tips and tricks video, one important thing is kind of getting your scene lit correctly. Now, the reason for that is because we're going to be messing with the translucency and the shadow settings on the character model itself. So if you've just got your light, like I have it here, pretty much sort of in the center, just shining directly at the face, you're not really going to get too much of a shadow and see how this line and the seam interacts with the shadow and the shade. So what we're going to do is just nudge that down just a little bit. So as we move the character model around, we've just got the shadow there intersecting with it. So that's going to help us find a sort of baseline for the color, because what we're going to need to do is kind of mess with the translucency of both the body and the head, or just one of them. You don't have to mess with both values, but you will have to use the material editor for either the head or the body or both to get your character sort of looking right. Now with this character, I'm just using the default skins. So that by default skin, I mean the AIT skin true face, and that will be applied for the body as well, AIT skin true. So making sure you've got your shadow like that. Also, if you're using like DHH presets or you're using graphics mod, I'd recommend just kind of getting the post processing or the color grading just to default, so no sort of extra sort of shininess. Or I mean, I've got reshade, bit of a kind of gloomy looking reshade from whatever I was doing the last time I was playing with it. But you just want to make sure you're looking at it in the default sort of color scheme, because otherwise you might not be able to kind of detect the colors correctly. You might not be able to match it, and it will just look shit. So, so first things first, we're going to open up the material editor for the head. Just double check I'm clicking on that. Okay, so the settings for the default skin, and if you're using something like Handman, which I'll cover in a bit, these options will be slightly different. So you'll need to kind of tweak slightly different sliders to get that down. But what you're looking for are these ones here: the translucency, ambience, the direct translucency, normal distortion, scattering, trans shadow. Now I'm not 100% on what all of these do, but it is basically how the light bounces off the skin and uh, obviously how the light kind of passes through it. Okay, so now the reason why I mentioned about the shadow is because we are going to be trying to get this matched where the neck seam is. So if we mess with the sort of shadow here, you can start to see there that that's kind of lightening the skin, but that's because the light is kind of passing through the model there. So we don't really want that too hectic at the moment. Really what we're looking for is the translucency, and that will start to adjust that there. The ambience is going to be the main one. What we're really trying to do is trying to match the two skin tones together as much as possible. And the reason why I sort of mentioned about getting that shadow is because you're going to get this. So even if you manage to match it with the light shining on it, it's going to look like absolute ass with the with the shadow shining on it there as well. So we need to sort of match the ambience as well. So that's obviously just the way the kind of light is diffusing off the rest of the model. So you'll kind of get the shadow, and then you've got to nudge this side. So maybe lower the scattering. So this is a little bit trial and error because it will be matching two different skin tones. Come on, Ambience. Maybe lower that down a bit. So this is me just the shadows matching. Up the directness. So these values are going to be sort of different for every model. So it is a case of really figuring out which works, but it's going to be moving one set of them to the extreme at one end and moving the others down the other, if that makes any sort of sense. So as you can see, we're kind of now nudging it just ever so slightly. You're just going to tweak and tweak and tweak, and you're not going to get it 100%. It is very, very fiddly and not always, you're gonna have very different skin texture for the face. It may not match up with the models. I mean, for the most part, most of the skin textures that you'll find under facial type, depending on the mods you're using, will usually have an accompanying mod that goes with them. Yacho's ones in particular do, but you're not always going to do that. You're not always going to use the same skin texture that matches the face. So that is a very, very quick fix on how to get rid of your awful neck seams. So I'm just going to very quickly cut the video and cover very quickly Handman. Good stuff. Now, if you're using the Handman next gen skin textures, he's gone out of his way to do the best he can to kind of get rid of the neck seam completely, but there may still be legacy issues from previous models, or it may just be that you've had to tweak your material editor far too much on a previous build, and now everything's completely out of whack. Now, the major difference that you're going to notice using the Handman's one is that there's quite a lot of different options. These are all various layers that the skin's got, but the main one that seems to be the sort of factor between your head and body neck seam is mostly how the glosses match up. Now you've got for the Handman skin, you've got one set of gloss here. You've got EX gloss, which is the wetness texture, so you don't really want to have that, but you can already see again with the shadow immediately what happens between upping it on this and then not having it on the body section there. So we'll drop the EX gloss, but generally speaking, you're going to want to try and match the values for the gloss here and the values for the secondary gloss and secondary gloss power. You want to sort of do that first, I would say, just to kind of get the model kind of matched up. So what we'll just do very quickly is just copy the value for the gloss there, and then make sure we jump in now into the body. It doesn't actually show you that it's loaded, but it has changed to body, and we'll just copy that into there. Then back to head. So 045, that will usually be at that value, and then just copy the secondary gloss value, which it was. Yep. So we'll just copy those to there. So you might need to change the values, but I just find that kind of matching those up to start off with, because you might, I mean, I personally prefer a little bit more kind of gloss on the face because it gives a lot more definition, a bit more kind of contouring. That's why I love this skin texture. It's so good. But the fixes for the neck seam using Handman's skin mod are myriad. There's lots and lots of ways that you can get rid of it. You don't really want to mess around with this too much. This albedo opacity, as you can see, between the head and the body, you really want to have those two matched. And you can see actually just where I had to change that value, that was because of the previous build of this. The next scene was really, really bad. He has now fixed it. Thanks a lot, dude. You're an absolute star. Um, but you are going to want to mess around with the subsurface opacity and the subsurface saturation. Those two values will help you get the skin matched. Unfortunately, you don't really seem to have the same control as you do with the baseline skin with the translucency shadows. It doesn't seem to work in the same way for me. I could be wrong, but it doesn't seem to sort of behave in sort of as such a sort of an extreme way, or as a noticeable way as the baseline skins do. But your opacity and saturation are the two that you're going to want to mess with. So I'd say really kind of look at lowering the opacity first. So that's obviously making it a little bit more translucent, but you don't want to make, obviously you're bleeding the color out of the skin there, so you don't really want to lower that too much. But with the handmade skin, you're going to want to kind of jump between the head and the body a bit more than you would do with the base sort of default skins. So with that, just a little bit of a tweak, and already that's kind of already looking a little bit better. Might do is just change the saturation a tiny bit, and then go to the body, a bit more saturation there. You've still got a tiny bit of a line. You're never really going to get rid of it 100%. Back to the head, and then you probably want to do is just maybe up your secondary gloss slightly, secondary gloss power a little bit, because you'll notice if you change, say for instance, the gloss value, that has quite a sort of profound effect on how that line looks. You can see it sort of changing there, and that is because you're sort of changing the same values, the translucency base and the occlusion, and all of those values will have a bit of a knock on. But that is the very quick fix on what you need to be looking at to get rid of the neck seam and what you should be looking for. Good stuff. Right, I haven't done any talking for about a month, so I do apologise for my shitty voice and my shitty mic. Thank you very much for listening, and I will release something else very soon once I pull my finger out. Okay, thanks for watching.